Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from simpleprogrammer.com. And I have another interview for you all. This is actually an interview that I've been super excited about because I've been following this gentleman for quite some time. I'm trying to think, my first introduction must have been when I read the game way back, way back when. But I'm talking about Tynan, the infamous Tynan, and his blog has just been awesome. There's been so many posts that he's written that have just connected with me, and I said, wow, I'm not the only quirky person who does this. Like I remember reading this blog that you did where you're like talking about throwing away your change, and I totally do that. One. Yeah, I totally do that. I throw away, the only thing I keep is quarter or above, and I hesitantly keep quarters. I'm not sure if it's worth keeping quarters, but I throw everything else in the trash can, and people get so pissed when they see me do it. I'm like, you can dig it out if you want, but
exactly. I put it on top of trash cans if I can, so someone can have them. That makes people feel a little better. But people get so upset that you throw away change, even if it's a couple bucks a year.
Yeah. But yeah, when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, we're kindred spirits here. But so welcome, Tynan, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I gave kind of a little bit like how I know of you, but maybe if you could give a little bit of introduction yourself of who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, I always have trouble with that one because I think really probably what defines me most is I just do kind of random crazy things or things that are maybe on the edge of what normal people do. And I try to learn from them for myself. And then I try to share whatever I've learned with everybody else on my blog or through books or just by trying to convince my friends to do weird things.
Yeah, that's cool. And for those of you that don't know, Tynan is actually a software developer as well, correct? Right? So perfect for my audience of software developers, so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about maybe some of the things that you've done and that you've been involved in, because there's quite a bit. I mean, obviously we have to broach the subject of the game. Yeah. So what maybe for the people that haven't followed that, what was that whole deal, and how did I guess what I'm really interested in is how that changed your life or your viewpoint on life?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe just a couple things that really had like a massive directional change in my life. And that was one of them. So in high school, middle school, all that, I was very, very introverted. I had really good friends, but it was a small, close circle of friends. But even if like one of those friends brought maybe one of their acquaintances around or something, like I would not feel socially comfortable with that. Like, I'd do my best, but I could feel myself retreating and becoming, maybe self-conscious. And so you can imagine if that's how I felt with a friend introducing me to a friend, how I was interacting with, women or, girls in my classes or, let alone some stranger. So I sort of stumbled across Pickup. I was maybe a little naive. I believed everything people wrote about it online. It just like never occurred to me someone would exaggerate or lie. So it was like, oh, you can actually learn this. Like, I'm a nerd just like this guy. Maybe I could meet girls too. And, it was really a case of being in the right place at the right time, as well as I think I just make decisions very quickly and jump on things. And so I got to move in with all the best pickup artists in the world in this house in Hollywood. And I was clearly the worst person there by an enormous margin. And they just took me under their wings, and I learned, from Mystery, Neil Strauss, the guy who wrote the game, the guys from Real Social Dynamics. They all just taught me, just as friends basically, and kind of got me up. I don't know that I ever got to really their level, but somewhere in that range. And yeah, it obviously changed my dating life, but also how I interact with friends and strangers, even family members, just understanding more where other people are coming from, telling stories, developing social skills.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's really interesting just to see. I think a lot of my audience will have a similar background, and I mean, I was an extremely shy person as well, afraid to talk to girls, and I had to overcome that. It really changed a lot in my life. I think it's a real struggle for software developers, like a real serious, debilitating struggle. It's kind of encouraging to see people that are able to overcome that. One of the things I was curious about with that was, well, I guess I'd say what was the thing that made you kind of make that change, or decide to actually do this thing? Like what was it that sparked that? I know it's kind of hard maybe to point to one thing, but what was it like? You know, a lot of times people have this, I've had enough. What was your?
No, I know exactly what it was.
Okay.
So my senior year of high school, there was this girl I had a massive crush on named Julie, and we spent that summer hanging out all the time. And I don't even know how this happened, because it was certainly no doing of my own. But she would just, almost every day, she would come over, pick me up in her car, and we'd just drive around doing nothing, or we'd like go, get lunch or whatever. And I had a massive crush on this girl, and but that was almost irrelevant to me, because I didn't know what to do with that, right? Like, I certainly didn't know how to make a move or what to say something about it. And so I don't know what I was thinking. I was just hoping something would happen. And last day of summer vacation, something did happen. We're walking around, and she says, Tynan, I've got something to confess to you. You're going to be really mad at me. I was like, oh God, what is it? She says, well, I've had a crush on you. I said, oh, well, that's great. I've had a crush on you too. And so we kissed. And then the next day she went off to school in Chicago, and I lived in Texas at the time. But in my mind, I was like, well, she's going to, we'll do this long distance thing and, just be separated for years and get married or whatever. And this sort of went on for years. We're like,
oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, man, I was barely ever seeing her. There was nothing romantic happening whatsoever. She was actually very clear with me. And I, of course, just was, not picking up the very clear signals. And so, she got a boyfriend, and I'm like, well, that's okay. She'll break up with this guy. And then they moved in together. I'm like, well, now they'll get sick of each other. Then they got engaged, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I just sort of had this moment where I realized, wait, this is definitely not going to happen. And if I stay on this path I'm on, that, it's not going to be a good ending to that. I'm not going to end up with a girl that I want to end up with, let alone her. And a guy I knew online through this gambling thing I used to do had told me about a site called fastseduction.com, which back in the day was this really nerdy forum. And that was sort of the hub of the pickup community back when it was this underground thing. And so I was like, okay, I gotta change. I gotta do something. And so I went there, and that was sort of where I read all the stuff that obviously people were exaggerating, lying, but I didn't realize it. So I was so motivated. And a lot of it was just sort of having this realization that, oh, this is a skill like anything else that you can change. I always just assumed you're sort of born with what you have and your charisma or your looks or your outgoingness, and you see what happens as you go through life and you end up with somebody. It never occurred to me that it's really just a collection of skills that you can really work on and learn.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I think a lot of people have still have that mindset. I was just coaching, I coach a couple of guys, and they really, I keep on trying to get them to stop saying I am shy or I am an introvert, instead of say, in the past, I used to be sort of shy, or in the past I used to, because that identity is so strong and they believe it can't change. But clearly it changed for you. I thought it was interesting too, how you said that it affected you outside of, not just in the pickup, not just with women, but just in social in general. I think I read one of your books. Was it not Superhuman by Habit, social?
Superhuman social skills, yeah.
That's what it was, yeah. And it was just interesting, and just reading your blog posts and stuff, it's interesting to see how many friends. I mean, you've got this huge network of friends all over the world, and it's hard for me to describe to the people that haven't read your book or haven't seen you talking about this on your blog, but you're the opposite of an introvert.
In some ways, in most ways. I mean, I still like to if I don't have some time with just me and my computer getting some work done or, writing, then I feel weird. But yeah, I value my friends and meeting new people very, very highly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good. That gives hope, I think, for a lot of a lot of people.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. I really was very bad. So. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. I was pretty bad myself too. It's crazy. I never thought that for a living now I would be talking to people, making YouTube videos, doing basically the opposite of what I thought that I could possibly ever do. So it's funny how that happened. But what I found was really interesting is I have found that your weakness, everyone says focus on your strength, but I have found that your weaknesses, when you develop your weakness, it's actually better because the strengths, like the natural talents that you have, you take for granted. And so you don't appreciate them as much, and you don't put the effort into developing them because they come naturally. But the stuff that I sucked at, that I had as weaknesses, that's the stuff I really worked on and really put deliberate practice into. And those are the things that I excel at more now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also there's a motivation piece to that when like you can't hit rock bottom on a strength, but
yeah,
on a weakness, it's like, oh man, like I really have to change this. And you really get that like driving force that makes you do uncomfortable things, which is how all change happens anyway. And so, yeah, I've had that same experience where a lot of my weaknesses have become strengths through a long process.
Yes, exactly. So, so I want to talk a little bit about the blogging platform that you built. SETI, right? Is the
Set, SETT, yeah.
Oh, Set. Okay, Set. Because I thought this was I'm just curious, like what because I know you're not actively developing on it anymore. Is that
Correct, yeah.
true? But it's a pretty damn awesome platform, honestly. Like it's better than what's out there right now. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on the whole project. Like, it's always tough when you create something and then it doesn't go where you want it to go. So how do you look on that? Like, how does that affect you now? Do you see it as a positive experience? Do you see it as a negative experience?
I mean, I see it as a positive experience, which isn't to say that I didn't have much bigger goals for it that I didn't meet, right? I'm not trying to say that didn't happen.
Right.
But, I didn't really know how to program when I started it. Like, I knew a little bit and whatever, but like, there's still a file in that project somewhere called cookietest.php because I didn't know how to set a cookie. And I was like, well, that's the first step. I need to be able to track, like who's logged into this platform. So I learned a tremendous amount, and that's helped me in other ways. I think I also realized just that I'm not willing to work on marketing stuff, and that's it's easy before you start a project to say, oh yeah, and then I'll get to the marketing part and I'll learn that and I'll do that. And then we got to that part, and I, for months I struggled with it. And hey, it would have been cool if I pushed through, but I didn't. And hey, I've got my ideal blogging platform now that I have my blog on, so I'm happy about that.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. I was really hoping it would take off, but marketing is definitely it's the weird kind of hard part of I've always focused on building an audience as kind of the marketing, but now it's working for you with the coaching, because you're doing coaching now, and like you've got I mean, essentially you're doing marketing because you have an audience, and so that's bringing you clients, right? So
yeah. And even the programming, when I needed to schedule these people, and the way I do it is I like to have my days by default. I'm off duty, and then I can just put windows when I want to take calls, so I can kind of bunch them. And I couldn't find any scheduling software that did that. So of course, like in a week, I make my own, and it adds stuff to my calendar and sends the notifications and all that. So, you still use the skills that you build from other stuff.
Now I want to talk about something that like I think is really interesting, at a parallel, something I feel like is critical to success that you definitely have, which is this ability to systematize things and to like I remember reading some of your blog posts when you're working on Set, that you like how you were eating the same thing every day. You like prioritize, like you had like a very tight schedule that you were like systems that you had built, at least if I understand correctly. I tend to do like a similar thing. Like I'm very systematic. I fast until 5 o'clock every single day. That's like my, I've got my routine and my things. So I'm just curious what your thoughts on, as far as like productivity on doing that. Like why build these systems? Why be so, some people would say it's anal to be like, so much, but what is the, what is the reasoning behind it?
Yeah. So in general, I think that you can increase your willpower and decision-making ability to some extent, but it's very limited. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is I just want to have the fewest number of decisions I have to make per day for stuff that doesn't matter. Like I only have one shirt. I just wear the shirt every day because I just don't really care. And this is a good shirt, so I just wear my same shirt every day. Same with food. Like I love Chipotle. I love sardines. So I just eat sardines for lunch, Chipotle for dinner every day. And like it's one of my least favorite situations to be in is when you're about to go eat, and it's like, well, where should we go? Should I go here? Do I feel like this? It's like such a weight. Like I have enough important things to think about, or medium level important things, that I shouldn't even be thinking about that. But I'm not so rigid with it, where I just come up with these things and I'm like, okay, here's my strong default of if there's not somewhere else that I have some good reason to eat for lunch, I'm just going to make my sardine sandwich. But if I'm like out doing something and that there's Chipotle next to the door, maybe I'll just go there for lunch too, or whatever. But for me, it's a lot of just like, I just want to direct my focus towards things that matter and not diffuse it over a million different things all day.
Yep. Yeah, I totally get. Yeah, I totally agree with it. I try to eliminate as many decisions as possible from my life. I've done some coaching with bodybuilding and stuff and I've done like the 6 or 7 meals a day stuff, and it's like it's so much simpler if I'm only eating 1 meal a day and I'm fasting until 5. Like that's a rule, and I know what I'm eating. Like I'm eating pretty much. I've got meal A or meal B, and I don't have to make a decision. My judgment sucks. Like every time you make judgment, like I might be feeling bad today, or I might be feeling good today. If I'm feeling good, maybe I'll make the right decision. But if I'm feeling bad, I'll probably make the wrong decision. And so I just eliminate all that. Same thing. And then I just know, like, it's like, how can you fast until 5 every day, John? Well, it's simple. It's a lot easier, believe me, than eating these small like diet meals throughout the day and making decisions. Instead, you just say, hey, you don't eat until 5. And once your mind recognizes that that's the rule and you're following that rule, it becomes easy.
Yeah, and you can make your decisions when you're at your best too. So you can do your research, you plan out your week or your day, and you say, okay, this is the macros work for these meals, for example, or this rule will work for me. And then you don't have to think about it when you're like really hungry or really tired and you aren't capable of making a decision.
Exactly.
I'd just rather build the system when I'm at my best and then just trust that I always make good systems. Or that I can tweak them later at some point.
Yeah, totally agree. That's so key. I think like being in the right mindset when you make the rules. I have this kind of standing rule that says that I can never quit a thing on the day that I'm supposed to do it, or the week that I'm supposed to do it, if it's like a weekly quota thing. So like if I said, sometimes I've gotten myself in over my head, like I was going to switch I'd run like 40 miles a week. So I was going to switch my Saturday run where I run 10 miles and I'd run 10 on the Sunday run. I was going to try and make a rest day. So I said, okay, I'm going to run 20 miles on Sundays. And, and I had planned this out, and that's a lot harder. It's about 5 times harder to run 20 miles than it is to run 10 and then 10. And I was like, everyone was like, oh man, you just don't do it. Just like, I'm like, no, I said I'm going to do it. So like after I'm done, like today I can't quit. I have to do it today. Right. And then tomorrow I can reevaluate and replan and make a new plan. But I never allow myself to quit on that day, because I want to make sure that like I had some kind of epiphany or some mindset that was right when I made the plan. And I can't at the point where I'm in the emotional baggage, the emotional trauma, I can't know if I'm being logical or analytical or smart right now. So I'm just going to follow the plan.
Exactly. Yeah, I do the exact same thing, because I just know that if I give my brain little loopholes and ways to get out of things, that it'll not only will it take them, but it'll establish a pattern of taking them. So it's like, okay, as soon as something becomes difficult, I give myself this easy out and I don't do it. So I'm always going to be looking for that easy out, or I'm always going to have resistance to the things that I know I should do. So I do the same thing where I never allow myself to quit or change a plan when it's easy for me to do so.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, that's it's interesting how that works. So it makes you appear to have a lot more discipline and willpower than you.
Right. Exactly.
I think. Right. So
yeah, I think we all have roughly the same amount of willpower discipline. You can build it a little bit, but it's like you can get such bigger gains by just developing systems that remove it from the equation. And from the outside, it looks like willpower or discipline, but it's really not that. It's actually just turning off the brain in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
Than using it.
Yeah. And I use that too. Like if you just have the rule, like journalists have to do this all the time, but like people say, oh, how do you write so much? Or like I do 2 to 3 YouTube videos a day, but that's just the rule. That's like it. If I have to do it, I have to do it. Right. So I'm doing it. And that, so that's actually kind of a good segue into the other thing I was going to talk about is you're a very prolific person. It seems like, that we employ a similar strategy. Like I always have the strategy, like if you're prolific, that will win.
Yeah.
And I know that you were doing like a blog post a day
Mhm.
for a while. Like you're always have, and with the books that you've written quite a few books. I don't know if you're still. I think at one point I read that you're writing 1,000 words a day, or you had like a daily habit. Unless I'm getting
Yeah,
confused.
not anymore. I had a bet with a friend where I had to write every single day for 2 years, and so that's actually, it's been a year since that finished. So I've toned it down a lot. That was actually probably a bad habit to have, or for me
Yeah.
at least. But yeah, so now I do it more in spurts. So in a few weeks, I'm going to write my next book, and be working many hours per day on that. But I like work. I like putting out work. I like how that feels. I think I've gotten pretty good at putting out incomplete work, which makes it a lot easier to do.
Yes.
Or imperfect work, I should say.
Right.
So yeah, like I don't really feel like I'm all that busy or that my schedule's that packed. But whenever I look back on a year, I think, well, I did a decent amount of work that year. I put out a lot.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's a lot. It's a lot just like focusing work on actual output rather than feeling busy or doing things that don't actually result in output. Like I think my ratio of input to output is extraordinarily high compared to people, but maybe my actual hours of input are probably not that crazy compared to a lot of people. Maybe average.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. There's I plan my week like using Kanban board and the Pomodoro technique, and I like have different cards that are so many Pomodori, and I don't count cards that don't have an output. So like if my quote is to hit 8 Pomodori a day, if it doesn't have an output, it doesn't count. So like making a phone call or something like that, so that I'm focusing on making sure that everything that I maximize the amount of output that I'm putting out.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that also like, it's just like you get better at like, if you just, if you write 100 novels, you'll become an expert novelist.
Yeah.
Like it's impossible for you not to, right? So when I started on YouTube, I sucked. I still, maybe some people still say I suck. They say it every day on the YouTube comment. But I'm a lot better in my own opinion than I was, just because I kept doing it. So
yeah, and if stuff is going to be output, then you take it a little more seriously. At least I do. Yeah. Where it's like if I'm just writing for fun, it's easy for me to. It's in the same way that my brain will like look for excuses not to do well. It's like, well, if it's not really going to be put out anywhere, maybe I don't do such a good job. But if it's like, well, this blog post is getting posted one way or another, you may as well do a good job on it. It just produces better work, I think, per hour. Yeah,
that's true. I try to do a lot of things in the public, just for that kind of reason. Like it's that accountability. Like I know that it's going to be out there in my life. Like I can't get fat, because if I'm fat, I'm doing YouTube videos. Like there's no way to hide that, right? Someone will say like, John, you're not following your own advice. You're getting fat. Yeah. And I'll have to say, so. But one thing I want to talk about too is one area where you've greatly influenced me is travel. I think the shirt you've got is a woolen prints. Is that correct?
That's right.
I've got myself one of those now, and I've got the undershirt, the woolen prints undershirt as well.
Is that what that is there?
No, this one isn't. This one's just a regular t-shirt. I just came back from traveling, so I've been traveling a lot lately. But yeah, I've always enjoyed your gear posts. I just made a list of things that I need to get, as I'm always trying to optimize my. My dream would be to have just this backpack that's ready to go. And so anytime I could just grab this and I'm good for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I'm eventually going to probably set that up, and I would just, maybe if I could even have 2 of them, that'd be cool. But
that's what I thought about doing, is having an extra one. But I don't know. I find whenever I do that, it just makes things complicated. It's like, if I know I just have one of each thing, I don't know. I like to try to simplify things, but I've had that same thought of always having one that's totally ready to go.
Yeah. But you've greatly influenced me on the travel. If people are wondering where I've gotten that, I went to Europe a couple of years ago for 3 months, and I took a backpack. That was it.
Way to go.
Yeah, life is so much easier when you just got the one thing that you're carrying around. Mm-hmm. So, but so I was kind of curious. You make me look like I don't travel, because you travel all the time. Where are you at right now?
So right now I'm at a friend's place in San Francisco, where I used to live.
Oh, okay.
I just got back. I flew here from Vegas, where I sort of live now, or mostly live. About a week ago, I think today, I was in Budapest, where I've been spending a lot of time. And then I've got a bunch of travel coming up too. So yeah, I stay pretty busy.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I just got back from San Francisco. I just ran the San Francisco half marathon, the rock and roll half
Oh, awesome.
marathon, and then I'm going to I'm actually going to Vegas next week. So,
Oh, no way. Nice.
but yeah, I've been traveling. I'm gonna be doing like a bunch of like Italy and Stockholm and gosh, where else? This
Have you been to Budapest?
I have not.
You
Should I
got to
go?
fit it in if you're going to Europe. Number one best place in Europe by far.
Really?
Like
Okay.
it's not even like a close one. That in second place. It's like it's the best.
Dang. What's so good about it? What's the
It's like a 10 out of 10 quality of life
Mhm.
in terms of like food, beautiful city, awesome things to do, culture, and the cost is ridiculously low. Like you can walk into a Michelin star restaurant with no reservation, and it's $20 for like a meal for dinner.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, maybe it's not as fancy as like the fanciest place in New York, but it's like as fancy as like the average fancy place in New York. It's also the best tea houses outside of Europe, outside of Asia, which I'm really into. It's the most geothermically active place in Europe. So there's all these amazing bathhouses, some from the 1500s.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so it's just like, yeah, it's very different from a lot of places in Europe, but it has like the nice food, the nice architecture, it has a lot of the nice things in common, and then additional things on top.
Okay. All right. I'll definitely have to. I'm gonna have to look at my travel plans and see if I can get that. Yeah, I definitely would. You know, for everyone listening, I would take Tynan's advice on travel. This guy is the world traveler. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. I'll have to look at that. I've been trying to kind of hit different places. I try to stay in place for a while too, so I kind of get the feel for it. I did China last year, which was just a crazy eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask about too is so tell me this. I think a lot of people are wondering this. I was wondering myself too. What does your financial situation look like? Now, what I mean, I don't mean like, you know, but I mean like how you're entrepreneur. You're not working for someone else. How do you make your money? How do you make income?
Yeah. So I've written a bunch of books, I think 6 or 5 or something like that. You know, some of them are on audiobook, Kindle, all that. I have a site called cruisesheet.com. I really love cruises, especially transoceanic cruises. It's just like honestly, if I could be on a transoceanic cruise for my entire life, I'd probably sign up for that. So I made a site called cruisesheet.com because some of these are incredibly good deals. Like right now, as we record this, there's some that's $40 a day or $42 a day, I think. Taxes, everything included for 15-day cruise. That's food. And it gets you to Europe.
Wow.
So I'm about to go on one of those next month myself. So I made that site, and that's.
Hold on, give me that one more time. What was the it's Cruise Sheet, right?
Cruisesheet.com. Yeah,
Okay.
Sheet of paper, not the expletive.
And that cruise you said it goes to Europe for how much was that?
So it's probably around $700 or $500 to $700 for like a 13 to 15-day cruise.
Oh wow!
From Florida to Europe.
Okay.
And it's like, you know, especially for someone who works out, you know, unlimited steaks, like lobster, like
nice.
A lot of vegetables. So like it's very easy to just eat protein and vegetables if that's what you do. Cruising is just the best. So I made this site. It started just as a way for me to find good deals for myself, because a similar site that had existed went down. And then now it's like a full-blown cruise agency. So I make money from that. How else do I make money? I do coaching calls now with a bunch of my readers. So it started with one girl that kind of approached me, and I said, yeah, I guess I'll do it for a year, try it out. And I really enjoyed it. She got like tremendous results. So now I've been taking on other people, and that's been going really well. So I make money from that. But a lot of I think the important part actually is that I'm just relentless about keeping my costs down.
Right.
So anytime I spend a lot of money, it's on something that's going to provide a lot of utility for a lot of time, so I won't have to pay for that utility in the future, or it's something that's going to permanently lower my costs. So my cost of living is, just next to nothing. Like I could probably spend $0 for like 6 months and be fine.
Wow. Yeah.
So, or maybe not zero, but like $100 a month, $200 a month. So that's that's the piece that I think makes all this possible. Because there've been times I made a lot of money, other times I don't make much money, but it kind of is irrelevant. So I just save it all anyway.
That's such an important strategy. I always talk to, yeah, I piss off a lot of young people's parents when they ask me like, what would you do if you're 19? And my answer is almost always like, cut your expenses down to nothing. Like, see if you can rent a room with roommates, like a room in a house for like $250 a month or $300 a month, something super cheap. Eat ramen noodles and eggs and beans, and start building an online business of some sort. Yeah. Because if your living expenses are $1,000 a month, let's say, and I think that's plenty. Like, then your ticket to freedom is at $1,000 a month. As soon as you could build a business that makes $1,000 a month in less than a year, and you could be free for the entire rest of your life. Never someone else owning I call it unmortgaging your life.
Right, and there's this other component too that I've been thinking about recently, where the lower your monthly costs are, the lower your variance is as well. Because if you have high monthly costs, then it matters so much how much money you make that month. Right? Like there's just like so much risk involved. Whereas if your costs are like next to nothing, there's almost no risk in your life, because like how hard is it really to find like $500 to live for a month or two? Like you can, go drive Uber, there's like a million ways to do that. Whereas if you need $2,000 to $3,000 every month to live, then you have to be earning that, or you have to have saved a lot of money.
Exactly. Yeah. You get into
I've got very similar advice for a young person though.
Okay, good. Yeah. We can piss off parents together.
And don't go to school. Don't start your kid off with debt and useless skills and some piece of paper. It's like, talk about setting up for failure.
I mean, I always tell people, like, it's like, what is it? Well, I'm very stoic in my philosophy, but like, it's like, okay, what does my day look like, right? I mean, I've done pretty well. I'm pretty financially successful, but honestly, like, I wake up in the morning, I work my butt off. I go and I either run for 2 hours and I lift for 2 hours, and then I fast until 5 o'clock every day and eat some scantily, some scantily meal, and I don't spend a lot of money. So like, I'm kind of living like a homeless poor person right now,
right.
And it's not that bad.
Exactly.
And so it's like why are you like do all this stuff when the purpose, like, freedom is what I value. Like the fact that I'm free and I can get on YouTube and I can say whatever the fuck I want, and like no one can tell me what I can and cannot say, and I can live my day how I want to live my day. That's the most valuable thing, at least to me. And it's like so many people sell their freedom for everything else, and it's just ridiculous. Like it's such a misguided path, I think, that so many people go down.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too to know, like, you obviously know what's important to you. And so you can spend money on things that are important to you. Like, I bet you go to a great gym that's probably more expensive than an average person's gym, or you have one at your house. Whereas, but maybe other things, it's like, yeah, you don't spend money on, lunch and breakfast because you don't want that. Or, if you know what's important to you, you can focus your money on that in the same way you focus your time on things that matter. Whereas a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, I'm successful now, so I have to have a nicer car. I have to have a bigger house. I have to, buy fancy clothes. It's like, well, if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses in every single category, like, then you're going to be miserable. Like, your whole life is going to be to support that. Whereas if you just get the things you care about, you can save so much money on the other things.
Yeah.
You don't need to work. You can have the life you want. Yeah. And like you said, like, it's all about freedom, where if you wake up every day and you can do whatever you want, especially if you've trained yourself to want to work on your own like projects, like, you've got a good life. Nobody can take that away from you.
Exactly. Yeah. I like to build the things that people can't take away from me. That's the interesting thing, because it's, that's what, ultimately there's one thing that Tony Robbins said that really impacted me deeply, is he said, I was at one of his seminars, and he said, the amount of uncertainty you can the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably live with. Mm-hmm. So that really, really shook me to the core, because I was trying to build this whole like fortress of impenetrability, and I was so afraid of, it was actually crippling my life. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting too. I heard, well, the other thing about that too, I think that you mentioned that was, and I picked up on it. You must be a poker player because you said variance.
Yeah.
But avoiding the squeeze situations. If you don't have variance, you don't have very many squeeze situations where you're in. Again, I guess probably another poker related kind of concept. But the idea that, like, if you have a very large monthly expenditure, then there's a lot of bad things that can happen to you. Whereas if it's very low, there's very few things that can turn out. I think the classic example is someone who lives paycheck to paycheck and they have a huge mortgage and a car payment, and they get sick. And so getting sick causes them to lose their job, which causes them to not be able to make a payment on their car, which causes them to lose their car. And like this whole cascading chain of events that happens because they're in the squeeze situation.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I mean, some people, genuinely bad things happen to them that are totally out of their control. But most people I see who in my opinion, have very like hectic, stressful lives, it's because they haven't built a foundation, right? It's like, yeah, like you have so many things you're trying to do that things are falling through the cracks. Like your expenses are so high that one little unexpected expense that we all have from time to time is going to derail your whole plans. It's like, it's not that you're unlucky or that, you're just so crazy. It's that you just haven't built that foundation where like your basic needs are taken and you're happy with those basics. So everything else is like, you just don't stress about it too much.
Yep. Yeah. You can they're fragile instead of anti-fragile. They're
right.
Yeah, I think that I was trying to think. I was going to ask you about the well, I might as well ask you, like, do you still play poker? I mean, you obviously must have played poker for some time.
Yeah. What happened is I played the World Series a few times. I played it 2 years ago and did really well I play limit hold'em, which is like the old man's game.
Okay. Yeah.
But I did super well. And so then I was like, okay, well, I got to move up. So, I was playing 10-20, moved up to 20-40, but my heart isn't really in the game anymore. Like I just don't care so much. And at 20-40, that's like where like real pros are there. And like, you're buying in for like $1,000 every night and you have to have another 1,000 in case you bust out. And so it's like, I'm not motivated enough to put that much on the line. But I do kind of miss it because I think it hones thinking in a really positive way. I mean, I've made money on it, so that's really great. But probably the way I benefited most was the way it's honed my thinking. So I was thinking about just dropping back down to 10-20 or just playing 20-40 a little more. Now I live 8 minutes from Bellagio, so I should, I should probably play a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I played for a while there, and I benefited a lot from it, from emotional mastery, because
exactly.
What I learned as I started to get good is that the top poker players, like at some level, like everyone knows the correct move almost, right? It's like if you reach a certain level, like everyone knows what the correct move is pretty much. I mean, there's some arguments on 2+2 forums or whatever about it, but essentially they know it. But the best, what makes you go from 95 percentile to 97 percentile is being able to execute on it, because that's the hard part, right?
I had a major moment of that. So I was at the World Series a couple years ago. It was down to the final 20 people, and everybody else plays like at least 100, 200, right? So they're much bigger players than me. I was playing 10-20 at the time, and to my right was the guy, I forget his name now, but the guy who's generally considered to be the best limit player in the world. And he was one of the biggest stacks. And I was like, oh man, like, of course I'm sitting to the left of this guy. And like, he probably had 3-1 on me, his stack, which doesn't matter as much with the limit, but it's like, well, he's not going anywhere.
Right.
And he got a bad beat. And all of a sudden he went on tilt. And which for people who don't play poker, it means you let your emotions sort of affect how you play. And he just blew through all of his money and lost. And he was out way before I was.
Wow.
And it was really interesting to me because like, I know that technically, like in terms of technical skills, I'm not as good as most of those people at that table. But something I really have mastered is emotional mastery, where just nothing's going to affect me. It was very interesting for me to see like, oh, in this particular case, I ended up doing better than the best player in the world because he hadn't mastered that one little skill. Even though like, if he could be in my brain and tell me what move to do, he probably would have corrected me a bunch of times. So it was interesting because, when you play a game, when you're gambling, you're thinking, where's my edge? And it was at that moment, I was like, oh, so that's actually what my edge is that I'll always play to the best of my ability no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah. Most people won't. It's interesting. There's also this connection here, I think, too, between like, I kind of draw the connection between me getting over like the fear of rejection. And so that sort of helped me with the poker, and the poker helped me with like, there's almost this synergistic effect. Like if you think about it, maybe like being around, like learning from the pickup artist community, like you're sort of building emotional resilience at that point. It's like, you can't be invested. Like you got to operate and do what you're supposed to do, whether you're without investing yourself too much.
Well, they have that similar skill of being willing to do the right thing even when you're terrified to do it.
Yes.
Because that's going to happen all the time in pickup. It's going to happen all the time in poker, where it's like, oh, like I know I'm behind. I still have to raise this guy, and it's a lot of money. But you do it anyway because it works out in the end. And so
Exactly.
it's that same sort of systems like thinking where like, if I just do this, in the long run, I'll get the results I want. And so I'm just going to follow the system, even when I don't want to emotionally do it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And that's, you know, it's the same system with productivity. It's the same. I did kind of exotic options trading for a while, and it was poker. It was just poker. That's always the same thing over again. Bankroll management. Like, you have a plan, you execute the plan, even though, you know, your iron condor, one half of it's fallen to shit. So you know what the steps are to bring it back, and that's, you have to do it. And that was, it's the same challenge. So it's kind of interesting how that skill echoes throughout so many different areas of life.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the value too of learning a lot of different skills, especially ones that typically people in your field would not also learn, because you do then get to see all these parallels in different things and see things from a different angle than other people see.
Right. Exactly. Cool. Well, I've definitely enjoyed the conversation. I'd love to get together someday. Maybe if we're in the same city.
Let's get tea in Vegas next week.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to be down there for a conference called MicroConf. It's like a bootstrapped entrepreneur conference. But yeah, I'll shoot you an email or something afterwards, or when I'm down there. But yeah, that'd be cool. So I want to give everyone make sure we get people to go if they want to find out more about you and read your blog. I highly recommend, by the way, subscribe to Tynan's blog. Like, if you like the stuff that I put out on this YouTube channel and the kind of stuff that we talked about in this conversation, you are going to like his blog post. It is like right up, you know, same type of stuff like this. Is kind of really insightful thinking, I think, and then writing about it and exposing yourself, living in public, you know. So it's very valuable stuff. So Tynan.com, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And that's Tynan. And then check out Cruise Sheet. Definitely, I'm going to be checking out myself, and the books. I think they could probably just search on Amazon for.
Yeah, when you have a weird name, you just search for Tynan, and I'll show up anywhere you search, probably.
And I've recommended, you know, just like my favorite, I think of your books is Superhuman by Habit. I recommend that so many times over Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, because I think your book is better because it's more concise and it's more practical, and it's you know, whenever someone is trying to develop a habit, I highly recommend that book. We'll put links in the video and stuff so that you guys can click on those, or they'll be in the description as well. So
awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. Have a good one, and have safe travels.
Thank you. See you.